When I arrived home from my shift at the warehouse that Thursday, my hands raw from cardboard and my back aching, all I wanted was a shower and to lie down. I'd been picking up extra shifts trying to save every penny, but the key wouldn't turn in the front door. I jiggled it, thinking maybe it was stuck. It was the correct key. I'd been using it for 5 years, ever since I graduated college and moved back home to help them pay the bills during my dad's layoff. But the key wouldn't budge. I tried the back door and it was locked from the inside, the deadbolt thrown. When I knocked, no one answered. I called my mom and it went straight to voicemail. I called my dad and the same thing happened. That's when the reality of the small pile of boxes sitting discreetly under the overhang of the porch truly sank in. These weren't my boxes. These were new boxes, fresh cardboard. My parents had changed the locks and my life, along with everything I own, was sitting on the driveway. I had no warning, no discussion, no, we need to talk about your future conversation. Just a lock that didn't work and my childhood bedroom condensed into 3 cardboard boxes on the asphalt. What would you do? Would you just accept it, drive away, and cut them off? Or would you fight back using the only leverage you had? Let me tell you how it all started. I didn't just end up locked out on a Thursday night. This was the breaking point of years of simmering tension and a history of manipulation I was too blind to see. For 5 years, I had lived in that house. It started after my dad was laid off from his job in logistics, and my parents claimed they were terrified they'd lose the house. I had just finished my degree in business administration and was ready to move out and start my own life. But they pleaded with me. They said they needed my income to cover the mortgage. They promised that it was temporary and that I'd be helping them keep our family home. I was young, idealistic, and felt a strong sense of duty. Of course, I stayed. I got a job as an operations manager at a local logistics company. It wasn't my dream job, but the pay was stable, and the hours allowed me to contribute meaningfully. Every month, I gave them $2,000. They told me that covered the mortgage, utilities, and my rent. On top of that, I paid for all the groceries, the streaming services, the high-speed internet, and even small home repairs. If something broke, like the water heater last year, it was, "Can you put that on your credit card and we'll pay you back?" I never saw that money. They constantly reminded me how lucky I was to have a home and that I was saving money by not living on my own. It didn't feel like I was saving anything. My savings account grew, but slowly, much slower than it should have for someone with 0 real rent expenses. What I didn't fully grasp until much later was that I was effectively paying their entire lifestyle. While they told me they were struggling, they were secretly enjoying themselves. About 2 years ago, I started to notice things. Dad got a brand new set of expensive golf clubs, claiming he bought them at an estate sale. Mom came home with designer handbags she said were gifts from distant relatives I'd never heard of. But every time I brought up moving out, my mom would immediately break down into tears. "You're our only child," she would sob. "If you leave, who's going to take care of us?" Dad would grumble that I was being ungrateful, asking if I realized how much they sacrificed to raise me. They weaponized guilt like it was an art form. My duty to them became a cage, reinforced by their emotional blackmail. I was the responsible one, the one who planned, who budgeted, who thought about the long term. They were the ones who spent, who lived for the moment, and who used me as their safety net. When I asked about the house title, about maybe being added to it since I was contributing so much, my dad practically spat his coffee out. "Absolutely not," he snapped. "This is our house. You live here by our grace." It was always our house, our grace. I was a tenant without any of the protections of a tenant, a family member who was only family when it came to obligations, not privileges. This continued until 2 months ago when everything truly escalated. My parents started hinting that they needed more money. The property taxes had gone up. The insurance was more expensive. Everything is just more expensive, you understand. When I resisted, asking for receipts or proof of these costs, they got defensive. They accused me of not trusting them. "Are you calling your own parents liars?" they demanded. They would give me the silent treatment for days, moving through the house like ghosts until I gave in and gave them another $500. I was exhausted, stressed, and miserable, and yet I couldn't seem to break free. I felt like I was drowning in an ocean of guilt they had manufactured. I kept telling myself that they were my parents and I owed them, but I didn't know how much more I could give. I started searching for apartments, planning to move out by the end of the year. I even told my mom. Big mistake. The scene that followed was hysterical and manipulative. She claimed my abandonment would destroy them and that she might as well die if I left. I backpedaled. I apologized. I was a puppet on their strings. So when I found that locked door and those 3 boxes, it wasn't just anger I felt. It was a devastating, crushing betrayal. All those years, all that money, all that emotional labor I put in, and it was summarized by them literally changing the locks without so much as a word of warning. It felt like they'd just been using me for my income, and the moment they thought they no longer needed it, or perhaps found another way to get what they wanted, they discarded me. I stood there, key still in my hand, staring at the front door. The porch light was off. The windows were dark. It felt so incredibly finalized. I looked at the 3 boxes. They contained the essentials I might need immediately. Some clothes, toiletries, a few personal items. My computer, my professional wardrobe, my personal papers, my childhood mementos, my furniture, all of it was inside that house, inaccessible to me. It wasn't just an eviction, it was a complete, calculated takeover of my property and my home. I didn't have a place to go. I hadn't made an emergency plan because I was still convinced I would one day move out responsibly. My friends were either too far away or lived in tight, one-bedroom places. The nearest hotel was expensive. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have driven off, found a motel, and given up your property? Or would you have fought back, knowing that everything you worked for was being stolen? Comment down below. I looked at the boxes again, then at the locked door, and finally at my car. My mind was spinning. My stomach was in knots. But then a shift happened, a sudden and cold realization. They thought they had all the cards. They thought they were the parents and I was the child, that their authority was absolute. They thought they could treat me this way because I'd always allowed it before. But they forgot something critical. I wasn't just a compliant son anymore. I was a tenant. And in our state, tenant rights are powerful and clear. So I walked back to my car, my hands shaking not from sadness, but from a cold, sharp rage. I was done being their pawn. I looked up the number for the local sheriff's department. I needed to file a report for an unlawful lockout. I explained my situation to the officer, emphasizing that I had lived there for 5 years, paid rent, and my parents had locked me out and refused to give me my property. The officer was polite and told me to stay in my vehicle and that someone would be sent to investigate. While I waited, I looked through my email for copies of the bank transfer I'd set up months ago, the one for the extra rent payments, clearly labeled rent in the transaction description. It wasn't much, but it was proof. I found them, saved them, and felt a tiny flicker of satisfaction. My parents' biggest mistake wasn't locking me out, it was underestimating me. When the sheriff's vehicle arrived, it was like a dream. The deputy, a middle-aged man with a stern face, got out and came over to my car. I told him my story, showed him the locked doors, the key that wouldn't work, my boxes on the porch, and my ID with that very address. He went to the door and knocked. I saw my mom peek out from behind the curtain, her face going white when she saw the uniform. She didn't open the door. The deputy knocked again, much louder this time. Finally, my dad opened the door, looking bewildered and defensive. "Can I help you, officer?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. I stood back out of sight and watched. The deputy explained that I had made a complaint about being locked out of my home. "Well, that's absurd," my dad said, a shaky laugh escaping him. "This is our house. He's our son. He lives here, under our roof." The deputy nodded, looking at some paperwork. "Well, sir, you're not allowed to just lock a tenant out. If your son has been living here for 5 years and pays you rent, as he has stated and shown proof of, he is legally a tenant. And under state law, you cannot lock him out without following the proper eviction process." My dad's face changed from defensive to pure fury. He turned around, saw me standing by my car, and screamed, "How dare you? You called the police on your own parents, you ungrateful child." He was yelling, pointing his finger, his face red. The deputy immediately stepped between him and the street. "Sir, you need to calm down. Threatening your son will not help your situation. You have violated a legal process. You need to allow him to re-enter his property immediately, or you face potential arrest for unlawful lockout." My dad was completely floored. "Arrest? For my own house? This is ridiculous. He has no right." The deputy didn't back down. "He has the right of a tenant. You must let him in now. If you have an issue with his residency, you can serve him with a proper eviction notice, giving him the legally required 30-day period. But you can't just lock him out in the street." The silence that followed was heavy with a million unspoken words. My parents were completely in shock. They looked at me, not as their son, but as this adversary they had no idea how to deal with. Finally, with my dad glaring at me with an intensity that should have burned me, my mom opened the door. "Fine," my dad spat. "You want to live here, you can live here." I felt a strange sense of victory, but it was a bitter one. I went into the house, and the silence inside was deafening. My boxes were brought inside, but it felt empty. The home that I had fought so hard for, that I had given so much of myself to, no longer felt like a home. It was just a house where I lived with two people who hated me for holding them accountable. But I wasn't done. The very next morning, I was at the county courthouse. I filed a formal petition for my property. My dad had already gotten a lawyer and was claiming that I was not a tenant, that I was just a house guest, and that the sheriff's papers were invalid. The papers were served to them on a Tuesday afternoon. I was there, sitting in the living room, when the server arrived. Dad opened the door, looking even more stressed than before. When the papers were put into his hand, and he read the top, "Petition for order to return personal property and for damages due to unlawful lockout," I thought he was going to have a stroke. He read the next few lines, and his face went pale, a complete reverse from the previous night. The sheriff's papers made them sick. It wasn't just that I was demanding my property. The petition was requesting the court order them to give me 30 days to remove all my items, and I was seeking damages for the value of items I couldn't access, my legal fees, and for the unlawful lockout. They were facing the real, expensive, and legally binding consequences of their actions. My dad practically dissolved. He dropped the papers on the floor, stumbling backward into the house. You're suing us, your own parents." "For our house?" he asked, his voice no more than a whisper. My mom, hearing the noise, came down and started sobbing again, calling me a monster. But I didn't feel like a monster. For the first time, I felt powerful. I told them very calmly, "I'm not suing you for your house. I'm suing for my property that you are illegally withholding from me. The sheriff told you the law. If you don't like it, take it up with the court." They spent the next 2 days completely panicked, making frantic phone calls to their lawyer. But all I can assume is that they were told they had no case. They had committed an unlawful act and were now liable. The legal reality of it all, of facing a judge and having to justify their actions, completely broke them. They were all bluff and emotional manipulation, but when faced with the cold, hard, and neutral hand of the law, they collapsed. I spent that week quietly packing up my entire life. My dad wouldn't even look at me. My mom would just stand at my doorway, crying, but I remained cold. Every item I packed, every memory, was a confirmation of the life I had let them steal, and of the person I was finally fighting for. After 5 days, I had a move-out date set with a moving company. The 30 days they were required to give me passed, and the house was empty of everything that belonged to me. The aftermath of this decision has been both heartbreaking and incredibly liberating. My parents and I haven't spoken since the day I moved my last box out of the house. I withdrew my petition once all my property was recovered, but the damage was already done. They are still living in the house, but I can't imagine how they are managing the payments without my input. My mom tried calling me twice, leaving tearful voicemails accusing me of ruining their retirement and their family. I listened, and I deleted them. I'm now living in my own apartment. It's smaller, but it's mine. I have control over my money, my time, and my life. The freedom is intoxicating, but it comes with a deep sense of loss. I lost my parents that day, not just as a support system, but as people I loved and respected. I'm learning that you can't love someone into being a good person, and you certainly can't love someone into treating you with respect. I still think about that Thursday night, about the feeling of that key not turning. It was a terrifying moment, but it was also the moment I was finally set free. The lesson I learned is that sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and sometimes even for others, is to draw a line in the sand and stand by it, no matter how much it hurts. It wasn't my parents who was the problem. It was my inability to set a boundary. They just took what I was giving. My only regret is that I didn't set that boundary years ago. But I'm here now, and I'm finally living my life on my own terms. So that's my story, and as painful as it has been to share, I hope it helps someone else who might be in a similar situation. You are not a pawn in someone else's life, even if they are your parents. You deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. If you found my story relatable, if you think I did the right thing, or even if you think I went too far, please let me know. Your engagement and your thoughts truly mean the world to me. I'm building a new life, and this community is a huge part of my support system. Thank you for listening. I'll see you all in the next story.